The Monsters Ring, Chapter 4, Russell versus his father's mouth. That sounds dangerous. Sounds like he's going to argue with his dad, maybe. Remember, because his dad talks all the time? Mr. Rafschnitz's face was beet red. Beets are those, like, vegetables that are red, right? And his nostrils flared out like a horse's. Just the sight of him was enough to turn Russell into jelly. He had a horrible feeling that he was going to melt and slide right off his chair. "Well," growled Mr. Rafschnitz, "what do you have to say for yourself?" Russell tried to think of an answer. Before he could come up with one, Mr. Rafschnitz began to pound his desk so hard that all the drawers in the file cabinet rattled. "Never mind the excuses. I hear excuses all day long. What I want to know is what we're going to do about this." "Well, I'll tell you what we're going to do, Kraneker. We're going to keep an eye on you. We're going to watch every move you make. One false step, one teeny tiny move in the wrong direction, and you've had it." The roaring was giving Russell a headache. He looked down at the floor and nearly choked on the boulder growing up inside his stomach. You think there really was a boulder in his stomach? No, just a feeling, right? "I'm pleased you see you're properly ashamed," gloated Mr. Rafschnitz. "I have called your father. He'll be picking you up after school." "He will? I'm sure he must have a lot to say." The boulder pushed Russell's stomach down to the bottom of his shoes, and it squashed it. Mr. Rafschnitz was right. Russell's father had plenty to say to him, and he had been saying it from the moment Russell got into the car. Now, Russell was having a frightening thought. He was thinking he might try to make his father listen to him. It seemed impossible, but his father had been babbling on for 10 minutes already, and Russell thought he was going to explode. He felt as if he had swallowed a stick of dynamite, and his father's words were like matches dropping near the fuse. "I know life can be tough," Mr. Kraneker was saying, "but violence isn't the answer. You know that, Russell. It shows that you have a small mind, a petty mind, a mind to give you a self-centered view of the universe, a mind—" Russell decided to try it. "But Dad, this kind of behavior is not what your mother and I expected from you." The flow of words rushed over him like the steamroller. His father wasn't even aware that he tried to say anything. "Dad, you've been raised to know that dumping spaghetti on people's heads is no way to communicate. And besides, Dad," his father barreled on, unaware that Russell was even trying to speak. The fuse was lit. "Now, the next time this kid Eddie gives you trouble, I want you to, Dad, inform the teachers." The fuse is burning faster. "Dad, her duty to see that the explosion was getting nearer. Dad, the students are protected, Dad, from situations like kaboom. Dad, will you be quiet for once and listen to what I have to say?" Mr. Kraneker blinked and lapsed into a stunned silence. Russell's cheeks turned red. He couldn't believe what he had just done. He felt like getting out of the car and running, but he couldn't. This might be the only time in his life that his father would be speechless. "Dad, listen. The teachers can't help. The only time Eddie and I are together is in the cafeteria or on the playground, when there's hundreds of kids around. Even if a teacher is watching, Eddie punches me anyway and gets in trouble for the fun of it. He doesn't care what happens to him. He doesn't care what happens to anybody. I've just been trying to tell you that, but you won't listen. You never listen. You're always too busy talking, and it's driving me crazy." His father stared straight ahead and drove without speaking. Russell waited until he couldn't stand it any longer. "Well, say something," he cried. His father blinked. "I didn't know you felt that way. I thought I was helping you, offering you guidance, showing you better ways to live. I always thought I listened to your problems. I've tried to be a good father, Russell. Goodness knows it's hard enough these days. Dad," his father blushed. "I'm doing it again, aren't I?" he said softly. "It's all right," said Russell. "I suppose it's a habit by now." "But it's a habit I'm going to break," said Mr. Kraneker firmly. "It's about time we had a two-way communication around here. I shouldn't be the only one to do the talking. I should let you share your thoughts, your dreams, your ideas, your—" "Dad!" Mr. Kraneker stopped. He bit his lip, looking embarrassed. "Let's not say anything for a while, okay?" said Russell. Mr. Kraneker paused. "You mean like practicing?" "Yeah. Okay. They rode along for several minutes in silence, something Russell could not remember having ever experienced before with his father. Listen, Russell, said Mr. Kreneker, at last, about this Eddie thing. I really don't know what to say to help you. Maybe that's why I said so much. But I'll think about it, and I want you to come and talk to me if you have any more problems with him. Next time I'll listen. Scout's honor. Russell smiled. Thanks, Dad. He waited a second, then said, What about Mom? What is she going to say about all this? Truth is, I haven't mentioned it to her yet, said Mr. Kreneker. He stopped for the red light. Turning to Russell, he said, Why don't we just keep this one between us men? Then he gave a wink to Russell. Russell felt a wave of gratitude. The light turned green, and as they started to roll again, Mr. Kreneker said, I guess I really haven't listened too much to anything you might have to say lately, Russell. Let's try to catch up some. He paused to think. Oh, I know. Halloween's this Saturday. Are you going to dress up this year? Russell sighed. I'm not sure. I was going to, but some of the kids are saying that's baby stuff. Mr. Kreneker laughed. The tragedy of premature maturity. It's a soul killer. Aren't any of them dressing up? Well, Jack is working on an alien costume that should be pretty neat. Well, that's good, said Mr. Kreneker. Jack always did act as if he came from another planet. Russell chuckled. And Sam is going to be a fat lady. Mr. Kreneker made a face. That's not very politically correct. He's apt to have the FLS after him. The FLS? The Fat Liberation Society. Russell actually laughed out loud. That's nothing. Wait to hear about Jimmy Riblin's planning. I hesitate to ask, said Mr. Kreneker, who had always claimed that Jimmy was the weirdest kid in Russell's class. He's going to put mayonnaise in his mouth and pretend that he's a pimple. Russell puffed out his cheeks, then poked them with his finger in a popping gesture to demonstrate. Yuck, cried Mr. Kreneker. He paused and then said, But what about you? You're so interested in monsters, I would think you would want to dress up like one. Russell started to describe his plans for a Frankenstein costume. Then he stopped short as he suddenly realized the incredible truth. He didn't need a costume. He had a ring.